I think we're going to see more of usage-based pricing. That's just my prediction, but I could be totally wrong, and I will eat my hat if that's the case. But um, I think we need to price fairly for customers and for businesses as well. And if you're using more, then it costs the business more, so you should pay for that. But we shouldn't just be trying to drive up users for no reason. If those users are not getting value, then really they shouldn't have to be paying for that seat. So yeah, I think that fits pretty squarely with our opinion on it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startups Founder podcast by Inside the Product. I am Juan Rodriguez, and I'm your host. And today we have with us James Sear, who is the co-founder at Avion. That it's a startup based on the UK, who is actually going after story mapping for Agile product management or Agile product teams. So welcome, James.
Hi Juan, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here, definitely. So maybe you could do a little bit of a quick intro of yourself and tell us what you are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm James Sear, co-founder of Avion, and in my opinion, Avion is the most user-centric way to plan and build products. It helps you sort of zoom out from the detail and plan more cohesive experiences for your users. So we're totally convinced that story mapping needs to be at the center of planning and delivery for all product teams. And that's basically why we built a story mapping tool that integrates into your existing backlog, and then it opens up a whole new way of visualizing your work and your roadmaps. So to kind of give you a bit of an idea of maybe some of the outcomes that our customers achieve when they use Avion, they get more consensus and alignment across the whole product team, so design, product, and engineering. They get shorter release cycles and a more kind of iterative mindset, basically. And they have a repeatable, user-centric delivery process. So story mapping brings all of these benefits, and really Avion turns that into a digital tool that product teams can use. I guess just touching on maybe who it's for. Avion, I guess it resonates most with product-minded people. And very often that's going to be product managers, product owners, business analysts, etc. But to be honest, anyone with a product mindset is probably going to find value in Avion's approach. We often find a whole host of job roles that actually use Avion. So it will be like CTOs, lead devs, designers, researchers, and to be honest, it's less about the job role and it's more about the mindset as to the kind of people that are attracted to our tools. So that's Avion. That's what we're doing. And I'd love to explore it a bit more.
So that's great to hear. And I think that resonates really well with the audience that we have in the channel. So people that are working with software products like product managers, designers, and so on, I think that that's going to be definitely the type of tool that they are very interested in. But maybe before we jump into the world of user story mapping, which is probably something that we're going to take longer, maybe can you tell us a little bit what is the story behind the name Avion? Because for me, being a Spanish, avión means plane, so I'm not completely sure where that might be coming from, or if there's some similarities there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a relation back to planes. So when we first were looking for a name for the product and the business, we had this kind of, I guess we had this tie to planes. Planes kept coming back for two reasons. The first one is we used to work, me and my co-founder used to work at a digital agency, and we had this exercise that we would do with clients, which was called landing the plane. And landing the plane was about figuring out, for the remaining constraints, time constraints normally, but sometimes budget constraints, what are we actually going to be able to deliver for the client. And it was really powerful technique to be able to work with estimations and just figure out, what can we actually, get done in the time remaining. And that was called landing the plane. And then we were thinking about, what does it take to actually to launch a piece of software, to launch a product. And that's kind of like trying to get a plane up in the sky, like you're trying to build up speed, build up momentum, build up some traction, and get the plane up in the sky. So planes kind of kept coming back, but we didn't like the word plane, in English or anything to do with planes. So we went for the French word, avion, and I didn't even know that the Spanish word is the same. So that's cool as well.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
yeah, I mean, it's great. And the other thing is when you're trying to find a name, you're always trying to find a domain as well. That's just the classic, you want something short and snappy and hopefully with a nice, dot .io or whatever it may be. So we found avion.io and it stuck. So that's the story.
That's really cool. And it sounds really good, actually. I think even as in Spanish, okay, yeah, first thing that comes to my mind is the plane. But yeah, I think that adding the IO definitely works pretty well.
Yeah, we get quite different pronunciation from our European customers than our American customers. They typically call it Avion, but that's okay. We don't mind.
So maybe before we jump in a little bit on the story, where do you have customers then? So you're talking about American and European. You seem to have already a substantial amount of customers.
Yeah, exactly. We have customers all over the world. I mean, there's never really been one sort of geographic location that that I guess is stronger than any other. I mean, maybe we're slightly further weighted to Europe and the UK, which is now not in Europe, but we also have customers in the US and Canada and Australia and all over the world as well. So I think it resonates pretty well with just the product world in general. And it isn't really, it's like any SaaS product. I mean, the nice thing about launching a SaaS business or a digital business is it's available to anyone in the world. And we've definitely seen that in terms of the market and the interest.
Nice. Definitely. Congratulations, definitely, because in the early stages to be already in quite many places, not always that easy. So
Yeah,
definitely quite an achievement.
thank you.
So maybe a little bit on the why user story mapping. Why is that the kind of the problem that you try to tackle? Why? How did you find that would be the place where you could be bringing problem or solving that need from your potential users?
Yeah. Um, so I think this goes back to me and my co-founder working together. So we both worked within an agency environment where we were building products for other companies, some of them big global brands, some of them small startups, and kind of everything in between as well. And one of the things we found really difficult was taking big ideas that the client had and turning them into actual development plans. How can we figure out what and why we're going to build something? And we tried a few different techniques, and we eventually stumbled across user story mapping, and it became this amazing kind of technique and framework, and it just encapsulated everything we needed to be able to do. We needed to be able to keep users front and center in what we were building. We needed to be able to communicate with the whole team. This is what we're building, and this is why we're going to do it. Um, and and story mapping kind of gives you all of those things. It also gives you the ability to kind of convey the order in which you're going to do things. There's a priority aspect to story mapping. It's actually, you look at a story map and you think, oh, it's just a bunch of cards on the screen. But actually, if you learn how to read it, there's axes and they mean different things, and it's really, really powerful. So we landed on that, and we were doing it as a physical exercise back then. We were using a wall and using post-its, and it was magical with with clients. It really worked. Um, and then over time, we needed better tooling to be able to do that, and not just lose the data. Once it's on the wall, it's kind of just there, and you take a picture, and then it's kind of lost. And back then, remote work wasn't as big as it is now. So we tried some different tools, and we never really got what we wanted. We got maybe halfway there. Um, and because we were both engineers, we just figured, well, let's just build it. um, and that's quite a big decision to make, actually. Now I think back, there was a lot to build. So it did take us a considerable amount of time to build it, but that's kind of how we got there, really. It was a problem that we were experiencing and we knew really well. And it turns out, fast forward to the future, that lots of product teams have this same problem. It's not just agencies that are delivering products to other teams. It is actually, product teams at big companies, at small companies. So it seemed to kind of resonate really, really well with the product community. And yeah, I'm pleased we've picked up this particular problem, and I think there's lots of stuff to move into in the future too.
Yeah. And I think that that makes a lot of sense because when I have been working in different companies, you have different tools like Jira or Jira, however people pronounce it, that to a certain degree they support like cards and they support certain workflows. But usually, many of those are built more from the engineering point of view, which is great. But then from the product point of view, they don't quite work. And then you end up trying to hack it and end up with a solution that is not very satisfactory and is difficult maybe to implement and to use.
Yeah,
And I think that might be. I think that that's where something like Avion then it makes a lot of sense. But
yeah,
maybe a little bit diving deeper is that um, so there is a workflow and a framework for user story mapping. So how much does Avion support that? Or I mean, tools, people can use tools in many different ways. How do you see that Avion is helping product teams to actually successfully follow user story mapping?
yeah. I mean, that's a great point, because we originally got inspired by Jeff Patton and his actual, he was the person that brought story mapping to the table, really. And we read his book, and I think we had a pretty good understanding of what he was trying to get across. But we've definitely seen many people doing story mapping in quite different ways, and particularly if you're using tools that are a bit more free form, like Miro or Mural or FigJam, where effectively you've just got this free canvas and you can do whatever you want, and that's obviously that's great, for collaboration and for you know getting discovery ideas together and talking about them in a remote world. That's really, really valuable. But when it comes to story mapping, if you want it to be part of the core part of your process, you kind of need some guardrails. You need some sort of process to actually follow. How is story mapping supposed to work? And what do I need to do first? What do I need to do second? And what do I need to do third? And then how does that integrate with my other tools, like you mentioned, Jira for engineering and tracking progress, and backlog tools. And that's basically what we've tried to build. So Avion is quite a constrained tool. It purposely has quite strong opinions on how you need to plan stuff out. And most of our customers find that really helps them focus on just getting the process into what they're doing, rather than arguing about you know different approaches to how your story map should look and how they should be shared around and stuff. So we're quite opinionated, I guess, in short. But sometimes a really good place to start is in a free form world, but then typically customers want to make it into something a bit more concrete and solid.
I agree. And, for example, I love using Miro or Notion, and they're great tools, but they are more like a sandbox tool. And if you know how to set them up, then you can get something nice. the problem is that when they are so freeform, you can end up with a real big mess really fast if you don't know how to organize it, create templates, and so on. And
Yeah,
I think that's something like, hey, no, this is what we offer. This is our value proposition. You get it done, and then you get this result, and it's clear. And I think that that makes a lot of sense, and it helps a lot for people that are maybe not that familiar how to set up those tools. And basically, you reduce also the learning curve and basically serve the need and the problem that they have. So I really love what you're trying to do there. Do you have
exactly.
already those integrations then with I don't know, Jira, GitHub, so on?
Yeah, so what one of the sort of most important parts of what we do is integrate really tightly into existing backlog tools. So whether it's a team that's coming from, their backlog being in Jira or coming from their backlog being in um, Azure DevOps, they're typically kind of bigger teams. But then we also get teams come from where they've got things tracked in GitHub or they've got things tracked in Trello. Um, Avion isn't really there to replace those tools because they're really useful for tracking, work in progress and just having a general sprint backlog. Um, Avion is there to take the product side of it, which is, how are we gonna build the kind of more strategic side of the product, and what chunks are we gonna deliver to customers first, and why are we going to do that? So it's about eking out the value and the experience, matching that with your user experience. That's what comes from the story map. And then the idea with the integrations is that it feeds into your sprint backlog, which is where you plan the actual execution of the work. So integrations are a really big part of it. But yeah, we're not there to replace tools like Jira.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great, uh, sometimes I have fallen in the trap of trying to build, like this roadmap with the features that is going to help and being understood by both business people, but also engineers. Really
Mm,
hard to do. So sometimes
yeah,
it's easier to have a little bit of the division, because I guess that then, for example, business people like customer success, sales, or marketing probably could look into the user stories and get a quite good understanding without getting lost into the details of how are we going to build an IAM or whatnot, which is probably it is like, what is an IAM for a starter? So I think that that's a great thing to maybe have it a little bit separate, so you
yeah.
have different audiences for different purposes.
That's exactly it. I mean, if you can kind of figure out a way, it doesn't have to be a story map for what it's worth. You can do this with other techniques, but if you can figure out a way of having, one place that speaks the same product language that everybody understands, so designers understand it, the CEO understands it, developers understand it, and it really talks from your customer's perspective, your user's perspective, then everyone can kind of understand what you're actually explaining there. Particularly if that can be a roadmap as well, which story maps are pretty good for. And then you have your tools like Jira, which can be a bit more technical. They can be focused on the detail. They can be focused on um, all of the tasks that make up what do we really need, what do developers need to be working on here, basically. So I think having that separation is really nice. It keeps the technical side as well a lot cleaner, because you're not just littering it with, here's a load of random ideas that have come from customers that we don't really have any detail on right now. They're just ideas and we haven't really categorized them. You can kind of leave that out and just have, your backlog, your sprint backlog, all about the kind of the things that you're working on sort of in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's really good to have that separation, because although I always try to say that, hey, you as a product people, you have to work also with like tech lead and all these people also to collaborate and plan and understand what you're going to be building in the future.
Yeah,
But when you're in execution, you don't want to have things that we could be building this. Yeah, but nobody has looked if this is a good opportunity even. So please don't touch it while we don't do the discovery, because it's very easy to just start doing something without
yeah,
knowing if that is even a real problem.
yeah. That's exactly it. And you do get rogue developers that just start picking things up and start building stuff, and then it's quite hard to say, well, actually, we don't know if we need this right now. So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
funny, is that, yeah. I love is this kind of love and hate relationship sometimes with rogue developers. They can be super useful and great to
yeah,
tackle certain things, but sometimes it's like, why have we built this? We didn't even need that
yeah.
at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the thing to do with developers like that actually just want to go, you know, go and do stuff is task them to do things, to do exploratory work,
Yes.
and say, look, we're investigating this particular technology. You should go do that. And I think it is good to try and use those skills as best as possible.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, otherwise you end up with a frustrated developer, which you don't want either.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that they are really good then for discovery. Sometimes they are not very good for like actual execution, but
Yeah.
for doing like the quick prototypes and stuff like that, they can be really, really good. So
Yeah.
it's just finding then their place. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So how maybe one thing is like when you were talking about story mapping, one of the frameworks, it has been a while already out there, but it has gotten super popular more recently, in my opinion. Is this jobs to be done? I think that the surname is Ulrich, but I cannot remember the name of the guy. Uh, and jobs to be done is a very similar, in a way, approach of, okay, our customers has a job that they want to achieve. How do we break down that job into the actual tasks or whatever features that we will have to build? So I
Yep.
think that there are many frameworks that then in the future that you could take advantage with a tool like this, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely interested in jobs to be done, and I've I've heard it done pretty well. I think probably the biggest example that I've heard was Intercom, and I think that they used a jobs to be done framework to really kind of revolutionize their approach to not only how they build product, but also how they market and how they talk to customers. So I think that, I mean, Intercom have been really successful, so that can
Yeah.
obviously be done really well. And they've always been quite pioneering with their sort of approach to product development and discovery. So um, I think jobs to be done can tie in with story mapping for sure. I mean, it depends to what level you take each one. I mean, jobs to be done could be done as a kind of an upfront exercise to understand the kind of maybe like the 4 or 5 main jobs that your personas, your users are trying to do, but then the exploration of how far can we take all of these jobs in terms of fleshing out features and functionality, that could probably be moved into the story map. Or you could just use jobs to be done across the whole process, but you'd need to come up with your own sort of way of tracking that, because there isn't really an official um, an official kind of asset or product that really, not that I know of anyway. So I do like it. I do like it a lot. I think they can be combined quite nicely.
So maybe tell us a little bit of the journey then of how you be growing your product. When were you founded? That I'm not completely sure. That I don't think that you have mentioned. And what have been the challenges for you to get to where you are at this point?
Yeah, sure. So me and my co-founder met in 2014, and like I say, we were in a sort of an agency world at the time, and I think we started building like an MVP of Avion around about 2018. Um, it really was, after work, sitting in a pub together and kind of coding and just figuring stuff out as we went along. There was no real long term planning or anything like that. Um, and then we sort of launched like a beta or an alpha version of the product, with some pricing on the website, but we just never charged anybody, basically. So there was kind of like an unspoken agreement that, this is what the tool would cost, but we're not going to charge you. And we got some customers using it, which was great. And we decided in 2019, we decided to just take the plunge and go full time, have a kind of a crack at it, basically. And traction kind of increased a little bit, and by about mid 2019, we started charging customers, and I guess that was our crunch point. Is this going to sort of transfer over to actual financial a financial outcome for us in terms of customers paying? So and they did, which was great. And then we just kept building on the product and the platform, really, and just keep coming up with a fresh kind of vision and strategy every 6 to 12 months. We raised some money at the end of 2020. We brought on another engineer, but we've kept the team really small, so there's still just three of us. Although this year we're planning to expand the team by another one or two people. So it's been a kind of it's been quite an organic journey to get to where we are right now. It's not some like crazy VC backed story where we raised 10 million out the gate and built a massive team, but it's been really nice. It's kind of worked out pretty well so far, and there's been ups and downs, but it's been good.
But I think that is great. I mean, that if you start bootstrapping it and then find your organic growth, I think that then you have a good foundation to start working from. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes the story of the unicorns are very sexy, but I think that out of those successful ones, there had to be a ton of them that weren't quite successful. And I think that an organic growth and like steady and maybe exponential at some point probably sounds like a more like a better approach and safer approach to build a business, the product and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we first started, we used to read. So I think, do you remember the company Baremetrics?
Mm-hmm.
Or they still exist today, but I think the founder sold the business. But they would produce reports of SaaS companies because they had metrics of SaaS companies, and that gave us a benchmark for where actually are we on, because the SaaS companies you hear about are the sexy ones, are the ones that have been a unicorn or something similar to that, and the ones that fail. But how about the vast majority in the middle, and that's where, if you can get data from companies like Baremetrics and Profitwell, you actually realize that most companies are in that middle section, and actually it's about kind of like you say, understanding your market, steady growth, and just having like you can still have a punchy vision and a punchy strategy, but you figure things out organically kind of as you go, and that's basically exactly what's happened to us.
That's really nice, and I think that that's a very, very healthy also approach, and also for people that not everybody has to be thinking about having to have that crazy growth from the get-go and crazy backed startups. That's not a normal story. I think that's more like your story should be more like the regular one, and probably the one that we should be listening and paying more attention to. The other one is more like the fancy one, but it's not a maybe very realistic approach for people out there.
Yeah.
So thinking about because you already have some investments done in the company. The other day I was talking with another founder. It's like when I asked that, it's like, how do you see them? Also, the VCs. I know that they are not your customer, but in the end, they're a little bit also like your customer as well. So how do you treat VCs? How do you consider them? And then how do you try to tell your story to them?
Yeah. I think when you're trying to raise and you're trying to talk to VCs, you have to focus on the stuff that's actually relevant to them. And as technical people, it was very easy for us to switch focus to the technical achievement of building and launching a product, which is that's difficult to do. But actually, what matters to VCs is how much traction have you got, and what does that traction look like? What advantages do you have over someone else in the market? That could be your network, it could be your experience, it could be the founding team. And you know, understanding the actual market. Do you understand the size of the market and where you sit in that? It doesn't have to be a perfect science, and I think that's one of the traps that I fell into is that understanding markets is a bit of an art rather than a science. But at the very least, you have to have thought about that so you can have the conversation with VCs, because what they really care about is this opportunity big enough? Is this the right team to be in that particular market? And do they have some traction that shows me that they can go on and deliver their plans? So I think when you first approach VCs, they're the things that you really need to be thinking about. We also made sure that we had a really nice deck. That was really important to us, was making sure that brand and design has always been a big part of what we love, and we tried to transfer that into the deck. That's not every company definitely needs that, because I know that some companies have the ugliest decks in the world, and they raise loads of money. So it's obviously not just about that, but that was really important to us because it showed this is who we are and this is what we care about, and that makes its way into the business and in the product as well. So I think that they would be the things that I would focus on, for first time speaking to VCs, and any ongoing conversations with VCs, to be honest, because that's the level that they're kind of working on, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is. I like what you said in the end about the deck. I think that the deck also is something that it tells about your perception of your brand, also how much you care or not about the branding. But I
Yeah,
agree with the other ones that you mentioned of if you understand the market, if you understand where you are in the market, because that's something that many people is like very easily go to. Okay, I have a service for product managers. Let's say that in the world there's, I don't know, 1 million product managers. If I take 0.1%, it's like, okay. But we'll see probably those ones that people just easily go into this and it's like, oh, well, this is a very big opportunity. If I just take a small percentage of it, it's like, well, but you don't even know what does that mean? It's like, can you reach those people? Are they in the countries or languages that you support? I don't know.
yeah,
Are they even used in story mapping, for example, or not?
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that there is a lot of study to be done there. But yeah, there's also a little bit the how is it called, the analysis paralysis, I guess, when it comes to market research. That where how do you find the right balance of doing a market research? I don't know. Do you have any opinions on that?
I think it's about having. You're right. You can do actual scientific research into the market, and maybe. And I remember us doing this. We tried to find actual research that had been done on our type of market and what the growth was and what the growth potential was for our market. The thing is, all of that stuff is just guesses. So, you've got to kind of take that with a pinch of salt. And I think probably a more pragmatic approach is to say, look, we think that we estimate that the market's around about this size, and we know it's going to grow because digital is here to stay. But it would be better if you could then call on a trend, for instance, that you've seen, on social media, that you think is going to propel you into that market and actually open up your market share, or that your plans are you're going to expand your product in such a way that's going to open you up to, a different role in a product team, for instance, if you're talking about, the product management market. So I think you just have to be a bit, you know, VCs want something realistic. Um, talk the big talk with numbers. That's cool, and have the big vision. But then actually like focus in on something realistic, because then they'll know that you're serious about it and you're sort of grounded in reality with where you're trying to go with a particular market or with a particular trend or whatever. And I think, like you said, the figuring out an actual go to market strategy, which is a bit of a buzzword, but it's really figuring out how you're actually going to sell to those people and get them to find your product. That's really important to investors. That they're really going to pay attention to that sort of segment. So you've got to have a good plan for that, really.
Yeah, I think that for me, when I have done exercises on this TAM, PAM, SOM, TAM, SAM, SOM, sorry, like total
Mm,
addressable market, create and serviceable, and so on.
yeah,
And in the end, the most important thing out of those ones, I think, is that okay, you know that the opportunity sounds big enough,
yeah,
and that I know how to start to do my go-to-market strategy, because I don't try to go for everybody. I just decided that hey, out of this big opportunity, I have chosen these few user personas, and in these market areas, and so on, whatever are your criteria. But that gives you a good starting point of who am I going to be reaching out for, and
yeah,
who am I going to be promoting to. Because if you try to promote to everybody, it's like everything's like when you try to make a product for everybody, it usually doesn't work, especially in the very beginning, and probably
yeah,
never, because nobody ever is using only one product.
yeah,
And then it's like just understanding or giving you those steps of the go to market. That yeah, is yet another buzzword, but I think is if you understand what it is, it's extremely useful, and if you do
yeah,
it right. So
yeah. Totally agree.
yeah. So how do you see maybe a little bit if we go back to you, your co-founder, how are you dividing then the tasks internally? Of course, you said that both of you have been engineers. Are you still both participating or taking part on the actually coding, or are you already dividing a little bit the tasks internally?
Yeah, yeah, we've totally split responsibilities now. So I don't write any code on the product myself, and I haven't done for I don't know, maybe 12 to 18 months at least. Um, I do still I do still write code from time to time. For whether it's just getting content out there on the marketing site or whatever, but my responsibilities are more sort of around talking to customers and trying to figure out where to work on the business next, I guess, and understanding our position in the market with marketing and with sales. And my co-founder Tim, he still codes virtually daily on the product, although he's still a massive part of the strategy of the business moving forwards. I mean, we talk all the time about it. um, and then we have another engineer as well on board who is just solely pretty much focused on building, although he does get involved with customer support and stuff, which is a really good thing. It's something I'd encourage, actually, anyone that brings someone into the team is just get everyone contributing to customer support, because you get so much insight from speaking to customers, even if it's the worst scenario and they're reporting a bug, which it normally is. You still you learn as a team, and you go, yeah, that's actually really problematic. How are we going to solve that? And you learn that feedback cycle of, here's something that's wrong, how can we solve it as quickly as possible to make the customer's experience good? And then how can we inform the customer so they know their problem's been solved? And normally, if you do that really quickly, you actually get more kudos from the customer. They're amazed that you're able to sort of react to them so quickly. So sometimes bug reports can be your best way to impress customers, which is really weird, because you think that bugs are bad, but they're kind of not. They're pretty normal, and actually, if you just respond fast and you respond correctly, then it can be really positive.
Yeah, it's like bugs is a funny thing. Like, of course, they have a bad rep because nobody likes to have a bug in our software. But anyways, we're all humans and nobody makes things perfect. I think that that's completely fine. I think that everybody has the experience, especially with big brands. It's like if you find a problem, it's like good luck having a result. So when you are able to actually get a something fixed and in a timely manner, it's like, whoa, wow, that's nice. Definitely, that's a very
Yeah,
nice experience. And I
yeah,
agree with what you said that everybody should be doing to a certain degree. This customer service, uh, because there are many companies that is like, no, software engineers never talk to customers. Product owners don't talk to customers, only product managers. It's like, why? I mean, everybody, I don't remember which company it was. There was some company that they kind of, it was mandatory for everybody to go through customer support every now and then
yeah,
because then it's like, hey, you understand what the customers are trying to do. You listen to them, and
Yeah,
you are also trying to figure out, okay, how they're using our product, how can our product bring value.
yeah,
Otherwise, if you're just building walls between your teams and the customers, basically what you're building is detached workflows, or basically features that maybe don't have any touch with the reality of the actual users of the product. And I think that that's a very big problem.
yeah. And the other thing is, when the whole team is involved with actually talking to customers, particularly over email and chat, you you have to talk about your language and your messaging, and how you actually, what is your what's your approach to customers. Are you going to put emojis in your responses, or are you going to be quite sort of business minded with your approach? And actually, if engineers are doing that, a lot of the time when you're building stuff in the product and an engineer has to write, an error message for a user, or they actually have to put some messaging in the product because there are no designs, or you haven't had time, or whatever. Well, actually, you're already a lot closer to the way the business speaks and the way that your brand speaks. So it's I think feel like the earlier the better you can get, everyone on the team just talking to customers in some sort of a way. They don't have to be sitting on customer interview calls or anything like that, but just sort of interacting, even by sort of Slack, or messaging or email. I think that can be really beneficial. So yeah, we've seen that work for sure.
Yep, I think that that's a great attitude, and definitely I think that it builds or it helps people be more empathetic to understand what is the problem.
Yeah,
And as you said, it's like just the fact that you had to either write or message or with somebody, with a customer, it gives you already a perception of how you should be writing, what tone and what not.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So where do you see then the future of Avion? Of course, being still in relatively early stages, you never know how potentially many pivots or not you're going to have, but you probably have some goal anyhow of where do you see Avion being in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a really big expansion of the product planned for this year. So we we see story mapping and road mapping as pretty linked, to be honest. And we don't really see any tools out there that are really taking this to its full potential. So our plan is to launch a road mapping sort of aspect to our product that is going to be incorporating all of the work that you've done from your story map in your roadmap. Or you could work the other way around. You could do a roadmap, and that would feed into your story map and your sort of delivery, I guess. So that's the expansion of the product for this year, and we're hoping to hopefully get something out maybe around summertime, but we're not going to put a hard hard deadline on it, because you know what it's like. But um, so that's the kind of space that we're moving into. We're not really going to be attempting to displace the Jiras and the GitHubs of the world, because I think those tools are just growing and doing really well, and I think most teams are um, that they're finding a lot of value in those tools already. And I think it's actually, it's the bit before that we can add the most value and experience into. So we're going to keep iterating there, and yeah, we're toying with new pricing models as well for this year. So that's going to be exciting to roll that out, and we're hoping to break a few rules and be a bit pioneering there with how we price and package our products. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the market reacts.
That's actually quite interesting because although maybe we can talk a little bit also on your competitors, but or potential competitors. So there's tools like Product Board, Product Plum, is it
Yeah,
Roadmap, AHA, and others.
yeah,
Generally, they are in the kind of high price, most of them,
yeah,
and that's something that, especially when being a pro lead, it's always like, okay, how much do you want to adopt one of these? Because then, yeah, your product team can adopt it, but if you want others to adopt, then it starts to get really, really pricey because, of course, you don't want to build like a fence and something that the rest cannot see the roadmap. And it's like, I think that sometimes that's a problem with those tools.
Yeah.
So how do you see competition? How do you see maybe positioning yourself? What would be your unique value proposition there?
Yeah. I mean, just on that sort of aspect of pricing and how expensive the tools can get. I mean, I think that is the fundamental issue with these types of tools is that virtually everyone is pricing based on users, based on seats, um, and we've really felt that problem because what you've got to think about when you're pricing your product is where is the value, and if the value is in the number of users, then fine. You know, you should price per user. It makes sense. But in a lot of these tools, the value is not really in how many people is in the tool, but is in, you know, what you're able to change in the business. So that could be, you know, the number of roadmaps, or it could be the number of stories, or whatever it may be. I mean, I'm just talking about these specific examples, but
Yep.
you have to figure out what is your most valuable sort of asset. And then I think your pricing should aim to be revolved around that particular thing. And that's where I think, you know, these companies like you just mentioned, you know, Product Plan, Product Board, Aha, even Miro and Mural and stuff. I mean, they have to find a way to charge. So user based is quite an easy place to go to. You don't really have to do too much calculation in the background. But actually, I think, you know, we're shifting over to a much more value based proposition for our pricing, which is effectively going to be more usage based pricing rather than user based pricing. So that's kind of the direction that we're going in. And in terms of how we stack up against those tools, we don't compete on an equal footing to, let's say, Product Board. I think they're more about gathering insights, or that's their sort of core philosophy is, you know, gathering customer insights and actually bucketing those in different areas and figuring out what are the most important insights. They do have some road mapping stuff in there as well. I think Aha, that bridges that definitely crosses some of our territory. I know they have some level of story mapping in there. I think our focus really is, you know, we think story mapping is the center of it all. And those companies, some do and some don't. So we want to get story mapping right, and then have, you know, roadmaps built on top of that, basically, to enable companies to really get a process that involves story mapping. And when they pay for it, they pay a fair price based on how much of that stuff they're using. That's kind of the place that we want to get to, I guess. And I think that's probably how we stack up best against our competitors. I think it's totally viable to be using Product Board and Avion. That would make sense, but it does get expensive. That's the
Yeah.
only thing.
But I agree, and I like your idea of more like looking into how can you charge the usage or by usage instead of by the people, because you know that there's many people in companies that are just like viewers of, they're like consumers of the information, and they really don't get the value that, like, for
Yeah,
example, a product manager will get, because maybe they are pretty much 50% of the time in that tool.
yeah,
So it's kind of a little bit, I find what you're talking about to be a more fair way to charge it. And I think that you still have a good value proposition, that you're focused on one aspect. I think that many times with the other tools like Product Board and so on, you end up either having to have like the internal experts that know how to set it up, or getting a consultant to help you set it up,
yeah,
because they have so many workflows that they can be used for, that then is it's always a tailoring effort. And I think that the fact that you are focused on one way of working and just providing as much support around it, I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
feels great.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I think we're going to see more of usage-based pricing. That's just my prediction, but and I could be totally wrong, and I will eat my hat if that's the case. But um, I think we need to price fairly for customers and for businesses as well. And if you're using more, then it costs the business more, so you should pay for that. But we shouldn't just be trying to drive up users for no reason. If
Yep.
those users are not getting value, then really they shouldn't have to be paying for that seat. So yeah, I think that fits pretty squarely with our opinion on it.
Yeah, and generally it just reflects also the costs that you are having internally in the company, also of supporting that infrastructure and so on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take too much of your time. I wanted to ask maybe a couple of questions more from you. It's like, so in this channel, many people are looking into starting their own products, or they are building products for their companies, having the typical struggles of people either working in tech companies, being a product manager, but also being trying to start their own company. So, what would be a recommendation? It can be one, couple of them, that you will have for somebody that it would be like a startup founder or a person that it's just trying to figuring their way out of how to create products, software products.
Um, I mean, I think it's worth trying to build something in a space that you understand. Um, so I think going hunting for ideas in disciplines that you don't actually understand yourself. I think that to me it feels like you're almost shooting a moving target, and it's going to be really really difficult to actually produce something of value. So there is that, focus on what you know best, and look for problems in that particular space. With that said, sometimes it's just luck. You just stumble across something, and then you get that light bulb moment, and it's quite hard to predict when that's going to come along, and that can be quite frustrating for creative people that want to go out and just build products and just make something happen. So sometimes you have to kind of be patient and just say, you know what, I'm just gonna keep working my hardest in this industry, and I'm going to keep trying to understand as much as I possibly can, and just push myself into different areas to really try and get the best picture I can of this. And at some point, something's going to become apparent to me that I can make a difference in this particular area. I can bring my expertise and maybe build a product, or offer a service or something. So I think that's probably what I would recommend when someone's trying to start. When you do actually get something off the ground, the one thing I would say is that it's just a series of peaks and troughs. That's really all it is. And for me, it's basically a roller coaster. You're riding a roller coaster, and some days you have really good days. You build something great, or you get some great feedback, or you land a customer, or you land 10 customers. They're all amazing feelings, but you do also get the complete opposite, where you lose a deal, you get a really bad piece of feedback. Someone says something publicly about your product or your company or you, and that can be really really tough to deal with. So I think you just have to try and sit in the middle, and just try and take it, go easy on yourself, because there are highs and there are lows, but you've just got to kind of ride the trend if possible. So that's been my experience anyway.
I'm pretty sure that that's experience for many people in startups. I noticed even with this YouTube channel, without obviously being the same in the same level, you can see that sometimes it goes great and you get a ton of views. Then you publish the next video thinking that it's going to do well, and it's nobody cares about it. So yeah, you can see these things also a little bit in the in other areas. So I think that probably that's a very relatable one to anybody creating any kind of product. That, yeah, it's not gonna be always what you thought that it would be.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not
that's
gonna be
exactly.
smooth.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be smooth. It's definitely not going to be smooth. But then that's why we do it, because when you get to certain points in the ride, you can look back and say, "Wow, we've come a long way," and we've been through highs and we've been through lows, but look where we are now. And you've just got to keep that in mind for the future. You'll always just keep moving, in one direction, and then you'll make progress.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a great recommendation. So maybe where can people find you? Where people can find Avion to follow up if they're interested in to give it a try?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to check out Avion, as a tool, or you think it might be useful for you or your startup or your business, then you can head to avion.io, and we have a free trial. You can sign up, and if you want to talk to me, we have a little chat window in the corner. If you hit that, there's only three of us, so you're probably going to get me at some point. And I am on Twitter and I am on LinkedIn, but to be honest, I don't use them all that much. Probably LinkedIn is the place if you want to talk, a little bit more seriously, I guess, about how Avion helps, and see if I can be of assistance. So hit me up on LinkedIn.
Cool. So I'll add those the links in the description. So if anybody's interested, you can go and check them out. So James, I just want to say that thank you very much. This has been super interesting. Always talking about frameworks that are used for creating software products. It's something that it's extremely passionate for me. So really, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And for all of you there in the audience, so thank you very much for spending the time here. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you get notifications for the next episodes of this podcast. We'll see you in the next one.